New beginnings are hard. Introducing an audience to a wealth of new characters, locations, myths, and lore is a massive undertaking for any creator. Some of the best writers in Star Wars revolutionized the landscape by introducing us to some of the most memorable characters and tragic events in all of Star Wars. And now they're gonna do it all again. Make sure you check out our High Republic guide on Youtini.com for information on the phase and wave structure of the High Republic. Much to our surprise, when Phase 1 ended earlier this year, we were announced that Phase 2 would move back in time and address a different era of the High Republic. This entire High Republic initiative has been wildly popular among Star Wars readers, and so we've been really excited to see where Phase 2 is going to take us. Rather than a direct continuation of the story of Avar Kriss, Keeve Trennis, and Marchion Ro, Phase 2 would be taking readers back in time, 150 years back in time to be specific, to an era of exploration and discovery, with some new faces to guide us along our journey. Path of Deceit, the first book of Phase 2, is a young adult novel that brings Justina Ireland, a fan favorite author among Star Wars readers, and combines her with the talents of a new face, Tessa Gratton. Not only does Path of Deceit mark the first time that we've had co-authors in the High Republic, it also marks the first time that a young adult novel is going to be kicking off a wave of content. Since its inception, the High Republic has been a beacon for fans of all types of literature. And as its authors have bounced between mediums like audio dramas as well as books, so have its key characters and plot points. Instead of assigning strictly what types of books can be consumed by which reader, this book probably provides a smaller story in terms of scale and scope than people who are hoping for an expansive entry to begin Phase 2. Its emphasis on character relationships, the expansion of the High Republic mythos, and a final act that goes toe-to-toe with anything we've seen in the High Republic before provides a really good jumping off point for Phase 2 that we're really excited to see where it goes. And a final act that goes toe-to-toe with anything that came before it provides a really, really good jumping off point for the era that redefined Star Wars books. Hello there folks, I'm Parker, a content creator here at Youtini, and this is the Youtini review of Path of Deceit by Justina Ireland and Tessa Gratton. First, let's jump into the plot. Path of Deceit opens on the planet Dalna. You may recognize Dalna from Justina Ireland's book Mission to Disaster in Phase 1. Dalna is going to provide the main stage for the entirety of the novel here, and the setting does a really good job of setting the tone immediately for the new phase. Rather than all of the bustling energy of the main worlds composed in Phase 1, Dalna provides a really small, isolated, conflict-free area, which is different. One thing about Dalna is it doesn't hold any official Jedi. It does, though, contain the Path of the Open Hand. As we follow characters both inside and outside of this group's influence, we learn about this group's infrastructure, social hierarchy, and the way that they view the Force themselves. Led by the enigmatic Mother and the equally mysterious Herald, the Path shows that they have one serious purpose: the Force will be free. This belief is held strongest by none other than one of the Path's youngest members, Marda Ro. Yes, that Ro. One of the two ever-reigning members of the Path of the Open Hand alongside her cousin Yana, Marda spends the book trying to figure out a way to serve the Mother and her people as best she can. She really wants to spend her time with her cousin off-world, liberating Force artifacts from worlds that would abuse them. But for some reason, she fails to obtain the Mother's permission to do so. She instead focuses her efforts on taking care of the little ones in the commune and preaching the beliefs of the Open Hand in town. This eventually brings her into contact with Padawan Kevmo Zink. He's a Jedi Padawan visiting Dalna on a separate mission. The connection between these two is instantaneous. For two people that view the Force almost entirely differently, their connection with one another is undeniable. Questions of attachment, loyalty, and fundamental understandings of the use of the Force immediately begin to come between them. Path of Deceit situates the budding romance between these two directly alongside discoveries of the true nature of the Path of the Open Hand. While the finale of the book jumps off the page with intrigue and revelations, the path to get there isn't quite as enticing as readers may be used to having read Phase 1 of the High Republic. But after knowing the final consequences of the story, it is possible that a reread could present an entirely different experience to the consumer. And while we never want to compare different books by different authors, it's really hard to not think of Light of the Jedi a lot when you start reading the first book of Phase 2. These books are both the jumping off points for their respective phases. And while Light of the Jedi provides a much more broad cast of characters and environment for its readers, Path of Deceit focuses on using its ending to crank up that need for what's next in Phase 2. The way that the book chooses to go about this is one of the most visceral feelings that we've gotten as High Republic readers so far. Youtini gives the plot of Path of Deceit the grade of good. Next up, let's go ahead and talk about the characters. The High Republic very quickly established some of the most favorite characters among the Star Wars community members. This includes characters that had multiple books and comics focused around them, to characters that had mere chapters dedicated to them. Needless to say, the roster of characters for the High Republic has been stacked since day one, and Path of Deceit adds notable names to that lineup. And to name a couple, none shine better than Marta and Yana Rowe. Aside from the intrigue provided by their namesake, Marta and Yana really are two sides to the same coin. They spend the book discovering their own destinies within the open hand, and the result of this in the book is a fascinating simultaneous character study of the pair. Marta's conviction rarely wavers throughout the book, and she's constantly trying to prove herself to everybody around her. She wants to be strong enough for the littles, worthy enough for the mother, and brave enough for herself to ask for the things that she truly wants. But every turn in her journey provides a new obstacle for her. The most obvious of these obstacles is Kevmo, who's another standout in his own right. He tries to illuminate Marta to his personal view of the Force, which he believes to be slightly less dogmatic. But the line between his logic and her budding feelings for him is pretty blurry. Yana, on the other hand, represents everything that Marta hopes to have. And this is pretty understandable because her younger cousin is recognized as one of the mother's children and is trusted to go off-planet and execute missions for the Path. And she also maintains a level of personal stability with her continuous girlfriend Core. Their relationship is one of the real emotional highlights of this book. This is one of quite a few wonderful examples of LGBTQ themes present throughout the story. We see Yana realize that this ultimate goal that Marta has is perhaps not what Yana wants for the rest of her life. The two of them unofficially alternate chapters throughout the book, but the climax of their respective stories reads with incredible depth. Some of their other respective scenes actually tend to lose their luster a bit. This is just because some minor characters of seemingly little consequence tend to muddy the progress of their respective stories. This expansion of the cast is not necessarily confusing, but the bouncing around does hurt the pacing of the book a bit. But this is just because as the reader, you really want more character evolution, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Some of those characters that do appear to be inconsequential earlier in the book come back and become really influential towards the end. Those little guys are actually able to deliver some solid emotional punch. Kind of similar to the ideas regarding the impact of the plot, you really can't help but wonder how much a reread of this book would enhance the emotions and feelings because you know what ends up happening. Youtini gives the characters of Path of Deceit the grade of good. Let's move on to talk about the originality of the concepts in this book. It's pretty special to see a familiar mythology crafted right before your eyes. Even though we've seen the evolution of Star Wars over the last 45 years, watching all of the different pieces of the High Republic fall into place is really special. Path of Deceit breaks new ground by not only introducing new characters and planets, but also religious organizations, social constructs, and even more. It's no secret that Jedha is going to be expanded upon pretty thoroughly throughout this phase, but the main sequences for expanding on this may very well lie in the upcoming audio drama, Battle of Jedha. You get a pretty small glimpse at what a really nice, active, glorious world it was before the Empire came along. Nonetheless, the main stars of the book are the planet Dalna, the Path of the Open Hand, and some artifacts and monsters that would get into spoiler territory if we started talking about them here. While reading the entirety of Phase 1 is not completely necessary to understand what's going on here, fans of the High Republic are rewarded time and time again with additions to the lore that we already know and love. This is a time when we're still waiting on High Republic reference books, so all of the lore and characters are contained within the pages of the books themselves. If you're looking to expand your mental lexicon of all things High Republic, Path of Deceit is aware of that and provides a lot of extra context to those concepts. Things like the Convocation, the Rod of Seasons, and even more. Overall, Youtini thinks that the originality of this book is incredible. let's move on to talk about the writing in this book. Although we know quite a bit about each creator in the High Republic thanks to the fantastic Star Wars publicity team, we still don't really know all the ins and outs of their creative process. Path of Deceit is the first co-written novel of the initiative. This is opposed to the very clear delineation between writer and artist that we're accustomed to from comics. But it's a bit unclear where Tessa, Gratton, and Justina Ireland drew the line in terms of creating this book. While the chapters in Deceit aren't necessarily delineated by writer, there's an almost subtle and intangible difference between Ireland and Gratton's writing styles. Even though you can't really tell which chapters feature which voice, the difference can kind of be distracting. With a book that's introducing so many new story elements while simultaneously continuing the flow from the previous phase, these sudden changes in author tone can create some obstacles in terms of being fully immersed. Let me just follow that up by saying that there's a wealth of beautiful writing in this book by both women involved. These scenes feature everything from an adorable meet-cute to true pain and despair. The dialogue throughout rings truthful and cuts deeply precisely when it needs to. Outside of the dialogue, there are a few phrases that are used to describe Dalna that kind of teeter on the edge of overuse. These can get fatiguing at times, but that being said, the final act of this book takes things to an entirely new level. Any minor gripes that you may have with the writing almost entirely vanish here because the story takes over. Justina Ireland and Tessa Gratton are at their best when the stakes are at their highest. By ending the book at the height of their power in the climax, the writing in this book should absolutely be considered a success. Overall, Youtini gives the writing in this book the grade of good. Okay, now let's move on to talking about the entertainment value of the book. Path of Deceit is a new beginning that absolutely nails its ending. Much like Daniel Jose Older's Midnight Horizon before it, the final chapters of this book are filled with intrigue and action. On a purely entertainment level, the revelations absolutely deliver. This book is going to instantaneously make you want to pre-order the next book in the series. These entertainment values are extremely high at the end. And that's because all of the groundwork that was laid in the chapters before finally comes to fruition. It's almost like Ireland and Gratton set traps the whole way along and they're finally all triggered at the same moment. Not only are the action sequences written with the trademark flair that the High Republic usually brings, but the emotional fallout is deep. Ending this book on such a high note is a fantastic strategy for the future of the High Republic initiative. But earlier parts of the story might lack excitement and intrigue for some readers. While the payoffs are definitely worth it, the road to get there aren't really filled with the most intriguing and entertaining chapters we've had the privilege to read in the High Republic. Just like the plot and characters, the entertainment value of Path of Deceit might just increase significantly upon rereading the book. At the end of the day, Youtini gives the entertainment value of Path of Deceit the grade of good. Path of Deceit welcomes readers back to the High Republic in style. While the story begins slightly slower than previous initiative entries, the final beats of Path of Deceit cement it as essential reading for any fan of the High Republic era. And the book also does the job of solidifying the importance of young adult fiction in the world of Star Wars. Overall, Youtini gives Path of Deceit by Tessa Gratton and Justina Ireland the grade of good. It's available now wherever books are sold and also on Audible, where it's narrated by Aaron Yvette. Thanks for watching, guys. If you guys liked this and want more videos about Star Wars books and comics, make sure you like the video, make sure you subscribe for more, and hit the notification bell so that you find out every time we hit publish. If you want to talk to more like-minded Star Wars fans about Star Wars books, join our Discord server. I'll put that in the description down below. Make sure you tune in on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays to The Living Force, The Cosmic Force, and Legends Look Back, our 3 live shows right here on the YouTube channel. And if you want to support what we're doing here, join our Patreon. All those links down below. Thanks again for watching, folks, and as always, may the Force be with you.